A warm and heartfelt welcome to each one of you as we gather today for a truly enriching and inspiring session. It is with great pleasure and anticipation we welcome Mr. Paul Kronenberg, co-founder and director of Kanthari, to guide us through an enlightening discourse on sustainable leadership. Would you quit a well-paid job overnight to start a blind school in Tibet? Difficult to make a call, right? Paul did the same. In one night, he decided to quit his job and start a blind school with Sabria Tenberg on an adventurous journey. He started his school in Tibet along with a braille printing press, an eco-friendly vocational training center, as well as a proactive integration program for the field, for the blind. Additionally, in 2006, the couple started Kanthari, a transformational leadership training center for social change makers in Kerala, South India. Paul was the driving force behind the construction of the award-winning eco-friendly campus. To date, 258 social change maker leaders from 53 countries were trained to result in 160 plus organizations that are positively impacting the lives of thousands of people across the globe or across the different margins of society. Paul not only has a personal story to tell, he recently battled non-Hodgkin lymphoma cancer, but has a treasure box of inspiring stories of survivors who come from the margins of society and who realize the impactful change. These stories have expanded the horizons and mindsets of many audiences he has spoken to. In a world that is rapidly evolving and facing complex challenges, the concept of sustainable leadership holds a pivotal role. It is a privilege to have Mr. Kronenberg, a visionary leader himself, share his wisdom and expertise on this crucial subject. Through his work with Kanthari, an organization dedicated to empowering social change makers, he has demonstrated an unparalleled commitment to nurturing leaders who are not only capable, but also driven by the genuine passion of creating social impact. Today's session promises to be an introverting exploration into the principles and practices that underpin sustainable leadership. As we embark on this enlightening journey with Mr. Paul, let us absorb, reflect, and engage wholeheartedly. Let's open our hearts and minds to the wisdom he has to share. Welcome, Mr. Paul. Floor to you.
Okay, thank you so much for the nice introduction, the kind introduction. So I hope I'm audible, and I do have a request, and I'm going to paste that now in the chat. So maybe you can have a quick look in the chat. So I would like to take you on a journey today, and every good story usually starts with once upon a time. So this time goes back to 1990. This is a long time ago. And so, hi, nice, thank you for turning on your camera, thank you. So this is a long time ago in 1997. I was traveling as a backpacker, and I went all the way to Tibet. So from the lowest country in the world, the Netherlands, all the way to the top of the world, where the first person that I met was actually a young lady from Germany. And I asked for her name, and she says, I'm Sabria, and she's from Cologne. And so Sabria is a person, I asked her, are you here for sightseeing? And Sabria said, no. She said it very vigorously. So what happened is that Sabria is blind, so she couldn't, of course, do any sightseeing. Luckily, she wasn't. She was in a good mood, and she wasn't angry and didn't beat me up. So Sabria told me her life story, and this has really changed my life, and it has changed the lives of a lot of people. So let me take you on this journey. So when Sabria was born, she was born with retinitis pigmentosa. That means that the retina on the back of the eye doesn't work properly. So the signal that comes into the eye is not being transferred to the brain. And for Sabria, when she was young, her parents knew this, and they knew that she's going to go blind, but they didn't tell her. And that was a good thing, because a lot of people, and this is a stigma that we try to fight till today, is that blind people live in the dark. And that's, of course, a myth, because a blind person doesn't see anything, and darkness is something. Right? A blind person sees as much as your toe in your shoe, It must be very dark in there. But if you take off your shoe, it should be light, but it doesn't because your toe doesn't see anything. So when Sabrina went to regular school, and of course she was different, but she didn't know that she was different, immediately she got bullied. And I always feel sorry for the bullies and for the people that are being bullied, because both seem to be in a sad situation. If people have to bully, there's something wrong as well. So for Sabrina, it was she dropped out of school for a while, and while she was at home, her father, who is a concert pianist, and he's also a philosophy teacher, read books to Sabrina. So in one of the books that he read was about Angela Davis, and Angela Davis is the one of the people that started the Black Power movement in the US. 3 words in that book changed the lives of millions of Black people around the world. Black is beautiful. And for Sabrina, at that point, she didn't speak much English, and black is beautiful, and she thought, well, blind is black. She understood that she was going to go blind at that point. So she said, well, if this lady can transform the conception of black being something negative, of being looked down upon, maybe I have to find the beauty of blindness. And so Sabrina went on this journey, and she found 4 parts that, where she said, what is better? What can I do better than a sighted person? So not what is my disadvantage as a blind person, but what is my advantage of being blind? And there are 4 points she came up with. One is focus. Focusing on what really matters, not being distracted by Hollywood, Bollywood, and advertisement. Then the second one is problem-solving skills. So as a blind person, if I would blindfold any of you now, and I say no one can help you, how will you move on? You have to solve a problem of how to, to get on in life. Blind people have to do this every day. Third one is precise and concise communication skills. Blind person can't point fingers anymore. They have to say 2 meters in front of me or in front of you. That's where, on the second shelf, that's where the cookie jar is. So they have to be very precise in their communication. And the last one is vision, because a blind person has to envision everything. They have to think of something that's not there yet, and that's exactly what vision is about. So when Sabrina understood this, she said, now I have to take my life into my own hands. And that's probably one of the most important steps for any person to make, right? To take your life into your hands. And so this is what Sabrina did. She went to a special school for the blind in Marburg. And this was a school where they focused on the ability and not the disabilities. And this was excellent because they looked at what can be done. So they did horseback riding, which was easy because the horse can see. They did downhill skiing. They did whitewater kayaking solo. Just imagine going down a river in a kayak without sight. But all this happened, and so for Sabrina, it was a big boost for her self-confidence. One day, they went on an exhibition about Tibet, and she thought, wow, this is wonderful if I could do something in Tibet, because there's mountains and there's adventure. And then immediately, she was asking, can I study this? Is there some kind of study that has to do with Tibet? And yes, there was. Tibetology in Bonn University. But the problem was, immediately, everybody was saying, well, you're blind, forget about it. This is a thing that always happens, right? This is people are being taught what they cannot do because it's a projection of the person that tells them. So Sabrina, she nearly gave up, but then luckily she was in an exchange program. She went to the US. She found a small scanner that is being dragged over black print, and what's underneath the camera is projected with small needles into the finger of the left index finger of the left hand. And so she could read A, B, C, but she could also read Ka, Ka, Ga, which is the Tibetan alphabet. So she learned to read and write, or at least to read the Tibetan script, the black print script. And when she went to university, she had a problem because she couldn't take down any notes because there was no Braille script for the Tibetan language. So being a good problem solver as a blind person, she developed the Tibetan Braille scripts within 2 weeks. This was seen by a Tibetan scholar. He took it to Tibet, and then they were very happy because there were no schools yet for blind people. And he asked, so who can come and teach? He was asked, he said, well, I know Sabrina. If I ask her, she will come immediately. And so Sabrina was asked, and she said, yes, why not? I would like to come and explore this. So she went to Tibet in 1997. This is where we met in the Banak Shul, which was a backpacker lodge. And this is where she told me this story. And so she went on horseback a few days after we met, and she went through the Himalayas, and found blind children. They were locked to their, they were locked in small chambers, small rooms, and they were tied to the bed, and a lot of them were left there, behind to die, because the participant or the parents, they believe it is bad karma, and it is something that's like a punishment for your previous life. Parents believe that they are possessed by demons, and they are not even, they wouldn't even touch their children. So Sabrina was very disappointed at that point, and she said, like, what can I do to make a difference here? So luckily on that trip, she met Tenzin. Tenzin is an 8-year-old boy at the time, and he said, "Oh, you're blind, I'm blind too." And he said it with so much conviction that Sabrina was wondering, how come that this boy has this confidence? Now here come 4 steps, that are very simple, 4 or 5 steps that count for every person in the planet, right? So he had a task because he was the yak herder in the village. Anyone who has a task has value. If you have value, you're respected. If you're respected, you get dignity. And only if you have dignity, then you can get self-confidence. Now, for a lot of people, it is, a lot of people, they don't, I would say, they never made it to dignity. So the problem for them is that, their self-confidence is not really there, right? And what do? They compensate their self-confidence with fake self-confidence, and that shows in having expensive equipment, a big car, big watch, expensive stuff. But inside, there's no meaning to that life. So for Sabrina, it was a signal that she said, now I know what to do. I have to create a center where I can bring these students together. I can bring these blind students together, and where they learn skills, where they get this, this dignity. And then with newfound self-confidence, they can go back into regular schools and they can integrate themselves. That was the idea. And this intrigued me a lot. So Sabrina said, I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to first to the government here and ask for permission. Then I'm going to go back home and raise some funds. And then I'm going to start this. And so I said, you know what, I'll join you with that. Give me a call when you're ready, and we do this together. So this was about 8.5 months later. I was back in the Netherlands. Sabrina was back in Germany. And then suddenly the phone rings, and it's Sabrina. And she says, well, I promised to call you next week. I'm going back to Tibet. And I was quiet. I thought, this is a great chance, right? But I have to give up my job. And so I was thinking, and then Sabrina said, well, you don't have to cry or anything. At least you can wish me good luck. We don't know each other that well. So I said, you know what, I'll join you. So the next day I quit my job. It was the best decision I've ever made. Went back to Tibet together with Sabrina, and then we faced lots and lots of issues. Biggest issue was people didn't trust what we were doing. People, we kicked out of the country because of wrong paperwork. There was a lot of issues were there. And but the biggest challenge we had was, how can we give hope to our blind students? So we started with 6, 7 blind students in our school. And so how can, life is what you're happy getting up for, right? Life is what you're happy getting up for. You have to have a good reason to get up in the morning. And if that reason is good enough, every day is a joy. A lot of people, when they get up, they don't want to go. What I hear is, I have to go to school. I have to go to work. That is terrible. So if I have to, changes to I want to. That's where the magic begins, right? So we came up with a solution for our students, and we started a dream factory. Most important question in life is very simple. Most important question in life is, what do I want? Not, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, anybody else. It's you, right? It's your life, right? I see Oliver Kemi would like to get some camera access, but I'm not sure how to do that from here. So maybe the team can do this. Okay, great. Thank you. There you go. Okay, there's somebody else. So we started a dream factory. We said to our students, we said, what is it that you want to do? And don't worry if you can or cannot, right? Because we'll solve that later. First, it's what do you want to do? So within 2 weeks, we gave him 2 weeks to think about this. And here's Norbu, 8 years old, and he smiles and he says, I want to become a taxi driver. Of course, he's blind, right? So what usually happens is that immediately parents, brothers, sisters, everybody around him would say, that's not possible, right? Are you stupid? You're blind. You cannot become a taxi driver. But I feel nobody has a reason, or nobody has the right to kill anybody's dream. Can you imagine a world where we would believe in everybody's and other people's dreams and encourage them, to realize these dreams? We would not be in the situation we're in right now. So Sabriya, she understood what needed to be done. So we went on. We said to Norbu, wonderful, great dream, go ahead. So this is a happy little kid running around. 2 years later, we had a new class coming in, and he was in school, and we asked him, so what about the status of your dream? We were doing a dream factory with the new kids. And then he smiles and he says, well, now I realize the fact I can't see. Maybe I cannot become a taxi driver, but I can set up a taxi company and run it. He's 10 years old and he got that, right? So he never did that. So 2 years after, he became interested in making cheese. So he was the first blind person ever in Tibet to fly. And he flew all the way to the Netherlands. And he learned to make cheese, came back and started our cheese factory. This is more than 20 years ago. Nowadays, he runs his own medical massage clinic, and he runs a restaurant. And he's successful. Why? Because he loves what he does. It's that simple. So at that time, we knew already at some point that we're going to have to leave Tibet, because we were in Tibet altogether 19 years till 2017, but that the government was, they were requesting or pushing foreign NGOs out, and we were on that list as well. We knew that's going to come. We knew this very early in early 2000s. Then we said, what's next? And then we zoomed a little bit out, and we looked at our planet, and we saw that there's a planet in crisis. Right, the newsreader starts in the evening everywhere worldwide. The newsreaders start with "Good evening," and 10 minutes later, if you hear all the news, you wonder why they say "Good evening." There's nothing good about the day, is it? So we said, you know what? We have to look at where can we create sustainable social change. How can we do this, right? And where can we do this, and how can we make this happen? So we started studying, and we looked in the history books. We did a lot of searches. We spoke to lots and lots of people, and we found that true social sustainable change very hardly happens when outsiders go into communities and try to make that difference, because they're not from there. So the first thing when we come to India is that we're not in India to change India, because that's not our role or our responsibility. If India needs to change, it has to be done by the Indians, right? Because it's their country. And they should do that from within. We call it change from within. So if you look at sustainable change, in Sabriya, as a blind person, she has a wonderful analogy. So she's standing with a white cane on the side of the road, and this is like the person that needs help. And here comes the helper. The helper goes, to Sabriya without asking, grabs her, carries her across the street. And then halfway, Sabriya feels that somebody's pulling me across the street. And what's happening? And she's asking, what's happening? And then that person says, well, I'm helping you. And then Sabriya said, what do you mean you're helping me? I was waiting for a friend. So then the person lets go. Sabriya is standing in the middle of the street. The person is angry, says like, hey, I was helping you. You're not even grateful. And Sabriya, after being helped, she's in more trouble than she was before. That's terrible. And this is the typical foreigners going into countries, so-called developing countries, and tell them what to do, what's right. So, and it's also happening within countries where people from urban areas, they want to help the people in the rural areas, because they feel that they don't know what life is all about. And I think that's the approach that we try to avoid. So we had the idea to start a center central in the world. And the center should be catering to people, to change makers, and people that want to start organizations to make a difference. And then we looked at our own story, and we said, what training should we have had that would have helped us to be more efficient when we started our organization in Tibet? Because we both were not equipped with the right tools and skills. And that's where we said, okay, let's start that training. And that started in the center of the world. And we're going to show you something. I hope you can see this. You see, this training center is called Kanthari, and you see it's in the south of India. And that's the center of the world, because in that circle, in Asia, Africa, and Australia, that circle, 85% of the global population is living. And I challenge you to do this anywhere else to prove me wrong that this is not the demographic center of the world. So people in Kerala now are very proud because they are the center of the world. So we started the center here. And so who's the center for? Well, we work with people that have seen the darker side of humanity. And what I mean with that, we work with people that were homeless, street children, HIV/AIDS orphans, people that have been affected by war, people with albinism. And in East Africa, people are being killed and chopped up in pieces, and their body parts are sold as good luck charms. It's absolutely terrible what's happening. It's $75,000 for a hand of a person with albinism is being offered by witch doctors. We work with people that are fighting female circumcision, people affected by environmental problems. People are focusing on water shedding, people with disability, women that have seen domestic violence, lots of different problems that they address. But all what they have in common is that if you want to start an organization, you need to be organized. And this is what we looked at. What skills and tools could we have used when we started? So every organization is about having proper policies in place, being properly registered, having a proper bank account, accounting system, have a website and a good name, have a logo, branding, public speaking, accounting, report writing, newsletter writing, fundraising. So these are all skills, and no matter if you're going to start a school for the blind or if you're going to start an environmental project somewhere, these are all the same. So that's the biggest advantage for us, for Sabri and me and our team, is that we can cater basically to anyone that wants to start any kind of social organization, impact-making organization in the world. So we bring these people together, and I would like to share why is it, because this is also the topic of the talk today, is sustainable leadership, right? So one thing I already mentioned, see, first thing, if people are saying, how are you sustainable, and it's linked to finances, right? Yes, finances play a role, but it's only one part, right? You can have all the money in the world, but if the leadership is not good in an organization, it's not going to go anywhere, right? You're wasting money then. So what is more important is to have people that know what they're doing, that are driven, that for whom this is not a job, but a calling, right? So Sabrina and I, we love what we do. We've done this for 25 years. We're usually up at around 5 o'clock in the morning. We get to office. Now it's 7:45 or 7:30. Usually we're in office till 8, 9 at night. We do this 7 days a week. We never have a holiday. And people say we don't have work-life balance. And I tell those people, I said, well, I'm alive. This is what we love doing. Every day we get so much back from what we do. And I dare to say that people that have a work-life balance issue, there's two issues that could be the problem. Either they're in the wrong relationship or they have the wrong job, right? It's life is what you're happy getting up for. And if you answer the question to yourself, what is it that I really want? And listen to that. And then start, finding ways to make that happen. You don't have to work a day in your life anymore, right? It's a very simple thing. But a lot of people are not really taking that serious from scratch, right? They end up in jobs because their peers were studying law, and then suddenly they became a lawyer because their friends were studying law. But then they're there as a lawyer and they're not happy. They're not going to be a good lawyer because they're not a born lawyer, right? And that's the thing. What is it that makes you happy, right? Life is what you're happy getting up for. It's not all that difficult. So now I'll give you a few examples of the people that we work with. I think the volume is low. Can everybody hear me? It's okay? Thumbs up? Okay. So I'll give you a few examples of people that we work with, and people that we work with are quite special. Here's Nancy Baura. Nancy is from Zimbabwe. She comes from Norton, and it's a very poor, village. And when she was born, the parents were extremely poor, and she couldn't go to school because the parents didn't have money for school fees. So she had to stay at home. Now, one day the parents were both gone. The neighbor comes in. She's 7 years old, and she gets raped. 7 years old. So just imagine that, right? So, and this woman, Nancy, right, as a young girl, she immediately understood. She said, listen, school is not just a place for education and training and learning. It's also a refuge. It's a safe space. So when at that moment she already said, if I ever going to marry, I'm going to marry the head of the schoolmaster because then my kids can go to school because then they're safe, right? So that's already an amazing thing. But then the problem was her father ended up in some criminal activity, got arrested, was locked away, and she ends up on the street with her siblings. So she survives on the street, and luckily, somehow she got off. And when she was 16, she married with a school headmaster. She got 2 kids. Kids were, everything looked fine. But then her sister passed away, and she had 4 kids. The sister had 4 kids, and she adopted them. She said, I'll take care of them. The headmaster didn't agree and kicked her on the street with her 6 kids. So again, she was on the street. And one day, luckily, a passerby said, okay, what's the issue? And then he paid for the school fees so that she could take up a job. And she ended up in the women's department. And in the women's department, she was interviewing other women from Norton. And most of the stories were similar to hers. Men are violent, they're drinking, they are, they're beating them up. And most of them were left, the husbands left them. So they're single moms, but they have 3, 4 kids. And the kids can't go to school. If the kids can't go to school, the mom has to stay at home and can get a job. So Nancy's smart, and she said, you know what? I'm going to teach you lorry driving, because she learned how to drive a lorry. So she started a lorry driving school. But the problem was, where were the kids going to be? And she said, you know what? I'll start a school. Not knowing that 2 weeks later in that school, she had 500 students. And a couple of months later, she had 2,000 kids in that school. And it was not a school, it was an old beer hall where she kicked out the drunkards, right? And she started that school. It's an amazing story as such, to see what one woman, how big of a difference she can make. So we were there last February. We visited that school, and it was magic, right? We were shocked by the poor condition, because kids were literally sitting on the concrete floor, like 50, 60 in a little class. And then next to it, you turn around, there's another 60, 70 kids, 100 kids with another teacher. There were no blackboards and stuff. But the magic was, because there were no blackboards. And when we asked Nancy, when she was here in our institute last year, and she said, like, well, I imagine a school where there's a blackboard and fancy furniture and a projector and all this, equipment, which she saw as quality education. And suddenly she had nothing of that, but yet she had quality education. And why? Because the teachers, they were motivated. The teachers were interacting with these children. There were no books, so they had to talk, they had to communicate. And what she did, she gave them an exam, and she gave them a task to create a theater play and songs and poems. And the next day, so in one day, she said, okay, create a theater play and show Paul and Sabria, what your life is about. So the next day we hear this poem from a young girl, and she was reciting this poem, and it was about the rights of a girl child, that there are no rights. She has to get married, and they got married off like 12, 13 years old. And at the end she said, no, but next year is my year to get married. She's 12 years old. And she said, but I refuse. I'm not going to do this. And just the power of that girl saying no, that's huge, right? Because that will change the narrative of her life. Then we had kids who were playing a theater play, and it was so sincere. They had to think about how they're going to shape their own lives in future. And then Nancy told us something that was heartbreaking, because right now there's a huge flood of drugs through Zimbabwe, where the drug dealers, they aim at 10 years old. So 10-year-old kids are having drugs. And she said, if they can't come to my school, they end up using drugs. And a lot of these kids that are under drugs, they beat up their own mom, they rob their own moms, right? And they become criminals. So every single child that she can have in that school is one person that contributes automatically to a better future and gets away from the drugs. So that story of Nancy, right? Then we have Samuel. Samuel comes from Uganda. Samuel was, I don't know if you know, but in Uganda there was Kony. Kony was one of the most sought after criminal in Africa, because he used to kidnap children and make them into child soldiers. And horrible stories were there. And Samuel, unfortunately, with his siblings, he got kidnapped by other child soldiers of Kony. And they had to march through villages. And when people would know that the rebels were coming, they would flee. And then, of course, the villages would be abandoned. But who would be left alone were the blind, the disabled, and the old. And Samuel was given a machete, because these old people and these disabled people were basically practice material to kill. And he was given his machete in his hands, and he said, you killed this woman. It was a disabled woman. And he stood there. And he said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And knowing that he was going to be killed. So another 17-year-old kid was given a gun. And he said, go and kill him. So they both went into the bush, and he was waiting for the shot. And at some point he screamed, he said, shoot. And then he turned around, he saw that the boy was crying. And he said, what's wrong? And he said, well, I know your father. I can't shoot you. And then they made a deal. He shot him in the leg so that he could still get away. And he fled, he got away. So Samuel survived this. And what happens, this picture of this disabled woman never left his mind. So he became a special teacher. a special pedagogue. So he learned deaf, he learned Braille. And what happened then, he got married, he had a child, and the child became profoundly deaf because he had malaria and he got some medicine, so he became profoundly deaf. And Samuel is this positive guy. He says, how lucky I am that my son became deaf because I already know sign language. So now he started a school, and not a special school, but a very special school. It's called Thumbs Up, and it's full inclusion because everybody in that school, it's sighted kids, it's not regular kids, it's disabled kids, it's everybody's there. Everybody learns Braille, everybody learns sign language, and everybody's, they just share. The walkers, they learn how to do wheelchair basketball. It's incredible. It's an amazing, positive place. Then we have Georgina Das. Georgina Das comes here from India. She's from Orissa. And Georgina was beaten up by her husband so many times that she said one day, this is it. So she left her kids with her sister. She went into the fields and she found a well that was 30 meters deep. And she looked around and she jumped. 30 meters deep. Luckily, she had double luck because there was enough water to, break her fall and not enough to drown. And the double luck came that Gauri Shankar, a child rights activist, from his corner of his eye, he saw this happening in the far distance. He said, something's wrong there. So he went there, saved her life. Georgina came to our place. She went back and she started Jana Mangal. And Jana Mangal is an organization in Orissa, and she has trained more than 5,000 women in skills that they can make some money so that they become less dependent of their husbands. They have these women's groups that come together, and when the women doesn't show up in the morning, they know that probably the husband has been beating them up again. So they would go there because the police is not doing anything. They would go with baseball bats with 7 women, visit the home of that woman and tell the husband, hey, one more time and we're going to beat you up. So they take, the rights into their own hands. And the best part is because they learn skills where they can make a little bit of money, they become less dependent from their husbands. And that's the whole point. The financial dependency of these women is incredible. So this is what it's all about, right? Empowerment of women so that they can take their lives into their own hands. So the last example that I want to give is, and this is a big problem. See, at this point in time, because the world is in a crisis, and I'm ashamed that right now, as I'm speaking, there are hundreds of thousands of people worldwide going into factories producing weapons. If that's not bad enough, they're actually being used. That's just insane, right? And what is worse is that tomorrow, again, bright-minded people go into factories trying to make even more efficient weapons. It's just that's, for me, it's there's so much wrong to that, right? So we can do so much better. That's what I'm going to say. We can do so much better. So the big problem at this point, I think, is that for a lot of people, they think that somebody else will solve the issues. Somebody else will solve the problems, right? So there is this saying that you're responsible for what you choose to do, but you're also responsible for what you choose not to do. And that's where the problem lies, right? It's only one straw, say 8 billion people. So, hey, why it's only one straw, right? No, you are responsible for what you choose not to do. And looking away is a choice. And I'll give you an example. We had Anumutu. Anumutu is from India. He's from Pondicherry. And when he was 5 years old, he lost his dad. And so his father passed away and he became a child laborer. He had a terrible youth. And when he was 11 or 12, some NGO offered him some training and he became a graphic designer and a photographer. Now, Anumutu lost his heart with the homeless people in Pondicherry. Every time he saw a homeless person, he had to go and help. And a lot of them, or several of them, died in his arms. And nobody helped him to get them buried. So just imagine, right? You're going to help somebody on the street. They die in your arms. There's nobody. So he was the only person that then took up the responsibility to bury them. So now when he came here, because he said, I need to do something for these homeless people. And he found out that most of these homeless people are not there by choice. Actually, their children have dumped their old father on the street. Why? Because dad is sick. If they bring him to the hospital, it will ruin them financially. The whole family will be ruined for the future. So dad is going to die anyway. So best way is to just dump him on the street somewhere. And that's a terrible, sad thing. So when he came here, we said, well, there's one issue that we have with your story is that you never really were homeless. So you're not one of them, right? Because that's the approach that we have, the change from within, right? Change from within means that, you are part of the target group. right? When you go back, you speak the same language, you know the culture, you know the history, you know the problem, you have solutions. You're one of them, right? So people has an immediate trust. But in his case, it was not the case. So we said, what can we do? And he said, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to be on the street. I'm going to try this, what it means to be homeless. And of course, it's not the same as really be on the street, but he went for 3 days. This was during the time that we had Ochi, which was a cyclone that came over south of India. He came back and he was sitting here at the desk and he was crying. And I said, what happened? He was completely broken. He said, I've never been so cold, so hungry, and so thirsty. He said, but that was not the problem. I became invisible. There are on average 3,000 people running through that railway station day and night. And nobody saw me. See, looking away is a choice. And I think the problem is that we all look away, right? There's something to that. And I think that's something that we can't do. So we are all responsible, right, in what we choose to do. So I'm going to wrap it up a little bit. So what we do here is we bring people from around the world to Kanthari. All people that come here have overcome some adversity, some social or environmental ill. And because of that, they're extremely driven to make a difference within their communities. And all of them have in common that they need the tools and the skills to start organizations, right? To start and run these organizations. And that's what we provide them. And we provide it in a very hands-on, experiential learning way. It's learning by doing, learning by failing, learning by, exchange. It's an extremely dense program. It's first is 2 months, it's online. Then it's 7 months on our campus in South India. And then the last 3 months, that's usually January till March. That's where they have peer support from, Kanthari graduates in their own countries. So just according to or explaining the name. So we started off as International Institute for Social Entrepreneurs, which is a terrible name. It's so we use it as a great example of how not to name an organization. IISE. It was absolutely terrible. So one day, luckily, we had lunch and Sabria suddenly jumped up and she was like, "Gee, what was that? And then our colleague said, "You just bit into a Kanthari." The Kanthari is a very small but very pungent chili. So it's an absolute change maker. You bite on it, you go boom, right? It gives you energy, it lowers your blood pressure. It's extremely good and healthy for you. So for us, it was a perfect symbol for a change maker. So that was the name, and then we said, okay, we're gonna we're gonna look at different kinds of change makers. So we have 5 colors, and you can look up on our website. It's kanthari.org. You can see the 5 different change makers. There's initiators that run green projects or green projects, environmental projects or training. Then there's the yellow. They use technology to provide skills and tools for people that need technology. Then there's the orange one. They use social entrepreneurship in the sense that they have a product that they can make that can finance their training. Then we have the red Kantharis. These are the fieriest, the activists. And then we have the purple that are the artists. Now, in the last 14 years, we trained 258 Kantharis from 53 countries. And this has resulted in more than 160 organizations worldwide. And they're changing the lives of thousands of people that are based on the margins of society every single day. So it's nice while we're sitting here, we know that in Africa, it's still a few hours earlier, a whole bunch of kids, AIDS orphans that are going to school, a whole bunch of old ladies that have dementia, they're also being taken care of. We have women that have survived the genocide in Rwanda. And are HIV positive, they are being taken care of. We have people that work on green projects, on water shedding, on mangrove restoration in Tanzania. It's just wonderful to see that what one person is capable of doing when the right motivation, when the intrinsic drive is there, right? So that person says, "This is what I want to do," and then gets the means and the tools to get that done. And I think we need to support so many more people in absolutely that. Ask and parents should ask their children what is it that they want to do, and then see how can they cater for that, and not what parents want their children to do. It's the opposite, right? So and listen, everybody's talking about the kids are the future, but we don't listen to them, right? Who is making the decisions, right? Usually people in politics, very old. Yeah, they have 5-10 years to go, and then they make decisions that are completely disastrous for the 5, 6, 10, 20 years old, right? We need to have a mindset shift, and not just a mindset shift or a paradigm shift, because without action, all of that is just talk, right? We need people that take it into practice. That's what we need. And I'm happy that, well, this forum here, change makers, right? We're talking about change makers, and we call them Kantharis, right? So a lot of Kantharis or a lot of change makers are being told, when they start or when they have this great idea for social change, they're being told that, you're too small, forget about it, don't grab for the stars, you're too small, you never can be doing this, you're just one person, what can you do, right? So now for all those that are on this call, whenever you are being told that you can't do something, now you can tell them, well, just bite into a Kanthari, and you can see that a small chili can make a huge difference. All right, that's it for me. So thank you. And I'm open for some questions. If you have any questions, then please put them in the chat box.
The chat box.
Okay, let's wait. Now going down. Yeah.
Do you have a short course available that change makers over 35 years can attend?
Okay, so the good news is we have no age limit. So it's 22 plus, and right now we have a doctor from Indonesia. He's 66, and he is working for people with leprosy. And so he wants to dedicate the rest of his life to make sure that people with leprosy get a voice and that something is happening. We don't have a shorter course than this. And see, one thing is, and this is an important part, I think, for a lot of people, if we have to have a focus. And we have decided that this is our focus. We are 100% here for the participants that are here in this course, and also when they're not on campus, right? We focus on this particular part. If we want to start shorter courses, then our focus will be shifted, and we can't do both in enough quality. So what people can do, of course, if they see, Kanthari is the last stop before people start and their organizations, or it's a stop when people have started an organization and they want to get more skills and tools. Right. So, but it does take that 1 year investment from their side, and we invest that in those people as well. So sorry, we don't have short courses, and we're not planning to do that. But if you want to have short courses, maybe you come for the long course, and you are the one that start short courses for other change makers. That's also a solution. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you very much.
See, Oluwakemi, last year we also had an Oluwakemi. I'm not sure if are you from Nigeria by any chance? Last year the Oluwakemi that was here was blind, and she runs a radio station.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paul. Your words have resonated with us today. The stories of impact, the anecdotes that you've shared, and also the narratives of empowering the youth out there. It's amazing. It's amazing the kind of work Kanthari is doing. It's just amazing to hear that. We have learned that sustainable leadership isn't just about a concept. It's about a mindset. A commitment to nurturing change makers to create positive impact. Your invaluable guidance has reminded us that leadership extends beyond an individual, and it's all about uplifting the communities and shaping the future to prioritize both people as well as all the people around us. So as Paul mentioned, there is so much work that needs to be done out there. So before we end this session, we carry this responsibility today with us, with determination and commitment to bring the change from within. So once again, thank you so much, Mr. Kronenberg, for enlightening us with your stories, and thank you for an amazing session.
Thank you.